Some families break slowly, cracks spreading over years until the foundation finally crumbles. Mine shattered in a single rain-soaked night where my parents left me to die on a remote stretch of road. The math was simple in their minds. One chronically ill daughter equaled too many medical bills, too much sacrifice, too heavy a burden. So they made their choice. They drove away, leaving me behind like discarded trash. My name is Ava Hart, and I'm 18 years old. I've been living with a rare neurological condition that's been chipping away at my strength since I was 12. What started as mild tremors quickly escalated. By 14, I needed a cane on bad days. By 16, I'd become familiar with the harsh creak of my wheelchair. Hospital staff knew me by name, and the endless specialist appointments drained my family's savings bit by bit. The night they left me, rain pelted the windshield as we drove through the darkness, each drop echoing the heavy silence inside our battered sedan. I sat in the back seat, my thin fingers tracing the fog my breath created on the window. Something was off. Even through the haze of pain medication, I could sense it. The air in the car felt different, heavier, charged with something I couldn't name. "Dad, where are we going?" I asked, my voice weak against the roar of the storm and the steady swish of windshield wipers. It was far too late for a doctor's appointment. No answer. My father's knuckles tightened on the steering wheel, white and bloodless. My mother stared straight ahead, her profile lit by the occasional flash of lightning. She hadn't looked at me directly in weeks. I tried again, my voice cracking. "Mom, what's going on?" She didn't respond. Just kept staring at the road, eyes fixed. Her jaw clenched like she was biting back words too bitter to say aloud. Fear crept into my veins, chilling me despite the fever heat that often clung to my skin. Finally, my father spoke, his voice flat, almost mechanical. "We're almost there." The car turned onto a narrow, unfamiliar road, the trees on either side crowding in their shadows, dancing in the headlights. I shifted uncomfortably, pain radiating down my spine. My medication was wearing off. The tremors already starting to creep back into my fingers. "Dad, please," I whispered, my voice trembling as much as my hands. "I don't understand, just talk to me." Silence. We jolted onto a dirt shoulder, the car shuddering as it came to a sudden stop. My father cut the engine. The only sounds left were the rhythmic drumming of rain on the roof and my own ragged breathing. "Get out," he said, his voice devoid of any warmth. I blinked, confusion momentarily overpowering my fear. "What? But it's pouring. I can't. Get out." He didn't turn around. His fingers still locked around the wheel, the muscles in his neck rigid. I glanced down and noticed a small backpack at my feet. It hadn't been there when we left the house. My stomach twisted. "Dad, I don't understand," I stammered, reaching for the pack. My fingers fumbled with the zipper, clumsy from the pain. Inside, I found a few bottles of medication, a thin blanket, a flashlight, and a water bottle, essentials, survival items. A cold, sharp panic gripped my heart. This wasn't a trip to the hospital, this was abandonment. My mother finally turned to face me, her eyes empty, her face a mask I didn't recognize. "We can't do this anymore. Ava, we've given everything we have. There's nothing left." I felt my heart crack, the sound louder than the storm outside. "But I'm your daughter," I whispered, tears already spilling down my cheeks. "You can't just leave me." My father stepped out of the car, the sudden roar of rain swallowing his footsteps as he walked around to my door. He yanked it open, cold wind and water blasting into the small space. He reached in his rough hands, grabbing my arm, pulling me out. My legs, weak and unreliable, crumpled beneath me. I collapsed onto the muddy shoulder, the impact jarring my already aching body. "You're a burden," he said flatly, letting go of my arm. I fell sideways, my head smacking against the wet ground. "We have nothing left. No money, no life outside of hospitals." The car door slammed. The engine roared to life. I clawed at the gravel, trying to pull myself up, mud and rainwater soaking through my thin clothes. "Please don't leave me," I screamed the words, tearing at my throat. The taillights disappeared into the night, their glow swallowed by the storm. I lay there, gasping, shivering, my body racked with tremors. My mind refused to accept the reality. This had to be a nightmare. It had to be, but it wasn't. A pair of headlights appeared in the distance, cutting through the rain-soaked darkness. Hope flared in my chest, fragile but burning bright. I raised a trembling hand, my voice too weak to shout. The vehicle slowed its beams, catching my crumpled form in the ditch. I braced myself, praying for mercy. A car door opened. Footsteps approached, splashing through puddles. A shadow loomed over me, blocking the harsh rain for a moment. "Hey," a voice said, low and rough, yet oddly familiar. A warm hand touched my shoulder. "Steady, despite the storm, I've got you." "You're safe now." I forced my eyes open. My vision blurred with rain and tears. The face above me swam into focus. A sharp jawline. Intense eyes that sparked a memory I couldn't place. "I never stopped looking for you, Ava." Before darkness claimed me, one thought cut through the chaos in my mind. I knew that voice. My brother. The one who vanished 9 years ago. When I woke, warmth enveloped me. The gentle crackling of a fire, the soft weight of thick quilts, and the faint, reassuring scent of cedar. My eyes fluttered open to unfamiliar surroundings. A small, rustic room with wooden walls, low ceilings, and a tiny, wood-burning stove casting a golden glow across the space. My damp clothes had been replaced with a soft, oversized flannel shirt and warm, dry socks. An IV line trailed from my arm, a slow, steady drip of clear fluid keeping me hydrated. My heart raced as fragments of the night before rushed back. The rain, the mud, my parents' final cruel words. I tried to push myself upright, but my muscles screamed in protest. Every nerve a live wire, I let out a shaky breath, my chest tight with fear and lingering betrayal. Footsteps approached. I tensed my pulse, spiking. The door creaked open and a tall figure stepped inside, his face obscured by the shadows cast from the fire. He carried a steaming mug in one hand, his broad shoulders filling the doorway. "You're awake," he said, his voice deep, tinged with relief. He stepped into the light, revealing a face both familiar and foreign. Strong jaw, stubble-shadowed cheeks, intense eyes that mirrored my own. "It hit me like a physical blow, Liam." I croaked, my throat raw and scratchy. He smiled, setting the mug on a small table beside the bed. "Yeah, Ava, it's me." I struggled to sit up, my head spinning as I tried to process his sudden reappearance, how when my words came out in broken fragments, my brain struggling to catch up. "Easy," he said, moving to support my back as I leaned into the pillows. "You've been through hell. Take it slow." I closed my eyes, grounding myself in the warmth of the fire and the steady rhythm of his breathing. The last time I'd seen my brother, I was 9. He'd been 17, wild-eyed and angry, slamming the front door behind him after a screaming match with our father. He never came back. "Why now?" I whispered, my voice cracking. "Where have you been all these years?" Liam's jaw tightened, his gaze dropping to the floor. He ran a hand through his hair, the gesture so achingly familiar it brought fresh tears to my eyes. "That's complicated. But I never stopped watching over you. I just couldn't come back. Not then." I searched his face, looking for answers for the brother I had idolized as a child, the one who had painted my bedroom ceiling with glow-in-the-dark stars when my fear of the dark grew too strong to bear. "But you left me." His shoulders sagged, the weight of years of regret visible in the slump of his frame. "I know, and I'll never forgive myself for that. But I'm here now." Silence stretched between us, thick and heavy with unspoken words and years of unanswered questions. I closed my eyes, the memories of my parents' betrayal too fresh, too raw to confront, alongside the pain of my brother's sudden reappearance. "Drink this," Liam said, breaking the tension. He handed me the mug, his calloused hands surprisingly gentle. "It's just herbal tea, nothing fancy, but it'll help." I took a tentative sip, the warmth spreading through my chest, calming the frantic thud of my heart. I looked up at him, my mind slowly piecing together the puzzle. You were following them, weren't you?" Liam hesitated, then nodded, settling into the chair beside my bed. I've been keeping tabs on them for a while. I had a bad feeling. They were acting strange, selling off things, liquidating accounts, asking about remote properties. I didn't know what they were planning, but I had to be sure. Why didn't you just confront them? I asked, my fingers tightening around the warm ceramic of the mug. Because I knew they'd deny everything and I needed proof, he replied, his jaw clenching. I needed to be ready for whatever they tried to pull. His words hit me like a punch to the gut. The image of my parents' cold, indifferent faces as they abandoned me replayed in my mind, sharper now, their betrayal cutting deeper with each passing second. Why didn't you just come for me sooner? I whispered, my voice trembling. Why did you leave me there alone for so long? Liam's eyes darkened, his jaw tightening as he struggled to find the right words. I tried, Ava. God, I tried. But they shut me out, changed their numbers, blocked me from every contact point, even filed a restraining order when I showed up at your school. My heart twisted, a bitter cocktail of anger and heartbreak churning in my chest. They hadn't just abandoned me. They'd actively kept my brother from finding me. I thought you forgot about me, I said, my voice small, the words tasting like ash. Liam reached out, his rough, calloused hand covering mine. I never forgot you, Ava. Not for a single day. Tears blurred my vision, the old neglected ache of a little girl abandoned by the only family she had left resurfacing with a vengeance. Why now? I choked out, my voice breaking. Why come back now? His gaze met mine, fierce and unflinching. Because they crossed a line. They didn't just leave you. They tried to erase you. I couldn't let them get away with that. For a moment, the fire crackled, filling the silence with the soft hiss of burning wood, the sound a gentle counterpoint to the storm still raging in my chest. Rest now, Liam, said his voice softer, the sharp edges of his anger momentarily blunted. We'll talk more when you're stronger. I nodded, my body already sinking back into the mattress, exhaustion pulling at my limbs as I drifted into a restless sleep. My brother's steady presence beside me, one thought repeated in my mind. I wasn't alone anymore. And for the first time in years, that thought brought me a flicker of hope. Days passed, each blending into the next as I slowly regained my strength. My muscles, stiff and weak from years of slow decay, protested every movement. But I pushed through, fueled by a simmering rage that had ignited the night my parents abandoned me. Liam was a constant presence, his silent, watchful eyes never straying far as I relearned how to use my own body. He had set up a makeshift physical therapy corner in the cabin's main room. Resistance bands strung over ceiling beams, a yoga mat for stretching dumbbells that felt impossibly heavy at first, but slowly became manageable as my body remembered its strength. One morning, as I struggled to push myself into a standing position, using the edge of the rough wooden table, my arms shaking with the effort, I let out a frustrated growl, collapsing back into the wheelchair Liam had salvaged from a second-hand store. I can't do this, I snapped, my voice raw. What's the point? I'm always going to be broken. Liam, who had been tending to the fire, straightened, brushing ash from his hands as he walked over. He crouched in front of me, his intense blue eyes locking onto mine. Listen to me, Ava, he said, his voice low but fierce. You're not broken. They wanted you to believe that, but it's not true. You're stronger than you know. I looked away, my throat tight with unshed tears. I don't feel strong. That's because you've spent years being told you're a burden, he continued, his hands gripping the armrests of my chair as if anchoring me to the present. They tried to make you small, to snuff out your fire, but I've seen it. That spark in you, it's still there. His words cut deep, each one a reminder of the life I'd been robbed of, the strength I'd been convinced I didn't have. I felt the familiar burn of resentment flaring in my chest, a heat that had been missing for too long. Why do you care so much? I shot back, my voice sharper than I intended. You left me too. You disappeared. You weren't there when I needed you. Liam's jaw tightened, the muscle in his cheek twitching as he absorbed my accusation. He sat back on his heels, running a hand through his unruly hair. I never wanted to leave you, Ava, he said, his voice thick with unspoken pain. But I had no choice. I was a kid myself. When Dad threw me out, I had nothing. No money, no place to go. I tried to reach you, but they shut me out at every turn. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms as I fought back the wave of emotions threatening to drown me. I wanted to hate him, to blame him for the years of loneliness and fear, but the anguish in his eyes, the regret that lined his face, made it impossible. So what? Now, I whispered, my voice barely audible over the crackling fire. What happens next? Liam straightened his gaze, turning hard, sharp like the edge of a freshly honed blade. Now we fight back. I'm done letting them control our lives. They tried to erase you, Ava, but they failed. My heart pounded, the familiar tremors in my hands returning, but this time they felt different. More like the vibrations of a tightly coiled spring ready to snap. How I asked, my breath coming faster. What can we even do? Liam stood, his broad shoulders casting a long shadow across the cabin floor. We expose them. We show the world what they did. We make them answer for every lie, every betrayal. I stared at him. My brother, the ghost from my past, who had returned just when I'd given up all hope. I felt the first flicker of something I hadn't known in years. Power. Okay, I said, my voice steadying. Where do we start? Liam's lips quirked into a grim smile. With their secrets. Over the next few days, Liam transformed the small cabin into a war room. Maps were spread across the dining table. Laptop screens glowed with open documents, and sticky notes littered the walls. Dates, names, and connections pieced together like a living conspiracy board. It felt like stepping into a crime drama. My life now a twisted puzzle I was desperate to solve. I watched from my spot near the fire, my legs still too weak for long walks, as Liam moved around the room, his every motion precise and purposeful. He was a different person from the carefree brother I remembered. Leaner, sharper, with an edge to his every word and action. You've been planning this for a while, haven't you? I asked one morning as he pinned another printout to the wall. A timeline of our parents' financial transactions highlighting sudden unexplained cash deposits. He paused, glancing over his shoulder, his jaw tightening. Yeah, ever since I figured out what they were up to. I frowned, my fingers tracing the rough grain of the wooden armrest. What do you mean? Liam let out a slow breath, dragging a hand through his unruly hair. It started about 2 years ago. I'd finally gotten my life somewhat together. Steady job, a little apartment enough to keep my head above water. But then I got curious. I wanted to know what happened to you, where you ended up. I felt a familiar tightness in my chest, the old fear creeping back, and I started digging, he continued, his eyes hardening as he spoke. School records, medical bills, even some old emails I managed to recover. That's when I found out they'd emptied your medical fund. My breath caught. I hadn't thought about that account in years. The fund our community had rallied around donating money to cover my treatments and therapies when my condition first became known. They drained it, I whispered, my voice trembling. Liam nodded, his mouth a thin line. Every cent. They pulled it out over the course of a year, small enough for withdrawals to avoid triggering alarms. Then they closed the account entirely. Anger flared in my chest, a bright, consuming heat that burned away the last of my lingering doubts. Those bastards. I spat, my fists clenching. They didn't just abandon me, they robbed me. Liam's eyes flicked to me, his expression unreadable. That's not all, Ava. I felt my stomach drop, a cold dread seeping into my bones. What else? He crossed the room, grabbing a thick file from the pile on the table. He flipped it open, revealing a stack of medical reports, lab results, and doctor's notes, each page marked with my name. These aren't just your regular medical records, he said, tapping the papers. These are from a private lab, Neurovita. They were doing experimental treatments on you without your consent. My mind reeled, the room spinning around me. What? What are you talking about? Liam pulled out a printed email. The company logo stark in the corner. I found this buried in one of Mom's old email accounts. They enrolled you in a trial program when you were just 3. They got paid to let these people experiment on you. My hands began to shake, the familiar tremors returning with a vengeance. No, that's not possible. They would never. They did, he cut in, his voice sharp. They signed the consent forms, took the payouts, and when the side effects started showing up, the tremors, the muscle weakness, they pulled you out and left you to fend for yourself. My breath came in short, panicked gasps, my mind struggling to process the betrayal. My own parents had sold me to a medical company, turned me into a lab rat for cash. How much I managed to choke out, how much was I worth to them? Liam's jaw tightened, his eyes flashing with anger. Over $500,000. I doubled over, my vision blurring as the weight of the truth crashed down on me. $500,000. The price of my childhood, my health, my future. I'm so sorry. Ava, Liam whispered. His voice strained. I should have come sooner. I should have stopped them. I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. It's not your fault, I gasped, my chest heaving. You didn't do this. They did. Silence filled the room, broken only by the crackling of the fire. I felt a dark, consuming rage rising within me, the kind that burned away all fear and hesitation. They're going to pay for this, I whispered, my voice shaking but strong. I'm going to make them pay. Liam reached out his hand, gripping mine, his touch warm and grounding. Then we do this together, he said, his eyes burning with the same fire that now roared in my chest. For the first time in my life, I felt powerful. The cabin felt smaller as our plan took shape, the walls closing in with each new revelation. I spent hours at the small desk Liam had set up for me, sorting through stacks of papers, medical records, and legal documents. Each file was a reminder of the years I had lost, the life I had been cheated out of, and the family that had turned me into a disposable asset. Liam paced the cabin, his every movement charged with a nervous energy. He had set up a whiteboard in the corner, the surface covered in hastily scrawled connections, dates, bank transfers, emails, and names. He drew lines between them like a detective piecing together a decades-old murder case. His jaw clenched so tightly, I worried he might crack a tooth. All right, he said one morning, dropping into the chair across from me. His hair stuck up in every direction, and the dark circles under his eyes spoke of sleepless nights. We need to hit them where it hurts. I looked up from the pile of medical reports, my fingers still trembling despite the warm tea I clutched. Which is? Their reputation? He replied, slamming his palm down on a folder labeled Neurovita Financials. They've managed to bury every complaint, every scandal, every botched trial. But if we can expose what they did to you, we can ruin them. I swallowed my throat tight. How do we even start? They've got money, lawyers, influence, they can crush us. A grim smile spread across Liam's face. They can try. He leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. First, we gather everything. Emails signed, consent forms, bank statements, medical records. And we put it all together into a narrative they can't ignore. I nodded slowly, my heart pounding. And then, we leak it, he said, his eyes glinting with a dangerous light. We go public. Social media, news outlets, whistleblower forums. We make it impossible for them to bury this. I felt a flicker of doubt, the familiar fear creeping in around the edges of my newfound anger. But what if they come after us? What if they try to silence us? Liam reached across the table, his hand covering mine. Let them try, he said, his voice low and fierce. I've been running for too long, I'm done hiding. I tightened my grip on his hand. My fingers still trembling, but my heart steadier than it had been in years. All right, I whispered, my pulse thrumming with a mix of fear and determination. Let's burn it all down. The next few days passed in a blur of long nights and caffeine-fueled planning sessions. I combed through my medical records, piecing together a timeline of treatments and side effects that painted a damning picture. Liam worked tirelessly beside me, his laptop open to encrypted chat forums and secure file-sharing sites. On the fourth night, as I struggled to stay awake, my head pounding and my muscles aching from hours of tense focus, Liam dropped a thick folder onto the desk in front of me. Found it, he said, his voice rough from disuse. I blinked up at him, my vision swimming. Found what? He tapped the folder, his eyes blazing, the smoking gun, the original consent form with Mom and Dad's signatures. My breath caught. I reached for the folder, my hands shaking as I flipped it open. The first page hit me like a punch to the gut. a crisp, legally binding agreement bearing my parents' signatures authorizing Neurovita to use me as a test subject. I felt my stomach churn, bile rising in my throat. "They sold you," Liam said, his voice flat, "for a few $100,000. I clutched the edge of the desk, my knuckles white. They knew what this would do to me. "They did?" Liam replied, his voice tight with controlled rage. "And they took the money anyway." I felt something snap inside me. A dam. Breaking years of suppressed rage and grief flooding through my veins, I shoved the folder away, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. "I'm going to make them regret it." I spat, my vision blurring with tears of fury. Every cent, every lie, every ounce of pain. They're going to pay for it. Liam's hand tightened on my shoulder, his grip grounding me. "We will," he whispered, his voice steady despite the fire in his eyes together. The first leak went live 2 days later. A simple, anonymous blog post titled Experiment 17, The Forgotten Children. It detailed my story complete with redacted medical records, financial documents, and timeline evidence. Within hours, it had been shared thousands of times, the hashtag #JusticeForAva trending across multiple platforms. My phone buzzed constantly, notifications piling up faster than I could read them. Strangers offered support, old friends reached out in shock, and the media began to circle, their predatory instincts piqued by the scent of scandal. It felt like standing in the eye of a storm, the world spinning around me as my carefully constructed walls of silence and isolation crumbled. I felt exposed, vulnerable, but also powerful. My voice finally echoing in the void I had been trapped in for so long. "They'll hit back soon," Liam said, his eyes never leaving his laptop as he monitored the chaos we had unleashed. "We need to be ready." I clenched my fists, the tremors still present, but overshadowed by the pulse of raw, unbridled fury that had become my new heartbeat. "Let them come," I whispered, my voice steady, despite the fear gnawing at the edges of my mind. "I'm not hiding anymore." The first sign that our plan was working came sooner than I expected. It was a gray, misty morning, the kind that clung to your bones and made you feel smaller, more fragile. I had just managed to pull myself into a standing position, my shaky arms gripping the back of the old chair by the fire, when my phone buzzed. I glanced down, my heart skipping a beat when I saw the caller ID. An unknown number. I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the screen. Was this it? Had they finally noticed me? I hit the answer button, pressing the phone to my ear. "Hello?" A brief silence. Then a familiar voice crackled through the line, "Ava." My blood ran cold. It was my mother. For a moment, the room seemed to shrink around me, the walls pressing in as my pulse thundered in my ears. I hadn't heard her voice in over a year. Not since that night on the side of the road. I gripped the chair harder, my knuckles white. "Ava, are you there?" she repeated, her voice thin, strained. "I'm here." I managed my voice colder than I felt. She let out a shaky breath, the sound crackling through the connection like broken glass. "We need to talk. I don't know what you think you're doing, but this smear campaign has to stop. You're making a mistake." A bitter laugh escaped my lips before I could stop it. "A mistake?" I echoed, my voice trembling with the anger I had tried so hard to contain. "You left me to die, Mom. You and Dad both." Silence. I pictured her on the other end, her perfectly manicured fingers clutching her phone, her face a mask of carefully maintained indifference, cracking at the edges. "It wasn't like that," she whispered, her voice small, defensive. "We did what we had to do. You don't understand." I felt a fresh wave of rage flood my veins, my head spinning with the weight of her words. "No!" I snapped, my grip tightening on the chair until I felt the rough wood bite into my palms. "You don't get to twist this. You sold me. You sold your own child to a company that experimented on me like a lab rat, then abandoned me when it got too inconvenient." "Ava." "Please," she said, her voice cracking, a hint of desperation slipping through. "You don't know what it was like. The bills, the pressure. We had no choice." "No choice," I repeated, my voice rising despite my best efforts to stay calm. "You had every choice. You could have protected me, loved me, but instead you cashed in on my suffering and left me to die in a ditch." I heard her sharp intake of breath, the sound like a knife slicing through the fragile thread that still connected us. "You don't understand," she whispered, her tone shifting, hardening. "If you keep this up, they'll come for you. You're putting yourself in danger. Let them come," I shot back, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear my own words. "I'm not afraid of them. I'm not afraid of you." Another long silence, the air crackling with unspoken threats. "Fine," she said at last, her voice turning cold, the mask slipping back into place. "You've made your choice. Don't say I didn't warn you." The line went dead. I stood there for a long moment, the phone still clutched to my ear, the room spinning around me as the echoes of her voice faded into the crackling of the fire. "They're scared," Liam said that night, his eyes gleaming as he reviewed the latest wave of social media posts, the hashtag #HatchJustice. For Ava had reached over 1 million shares our story, spreading like wildfire through news sites, blogs, and YouTube channels. I sat across from him, my hands still trembling from the confrontation, my mind replaying every word of that call. "Good," I said, my voice raw. "They should be." Liam leaned back, folding his arms across his chest, a satisfied smile stretching across his lips. "They're going to try to hit back. Hard. We need to be ready." I nodded, my jaw set. I'm not backing down. He leaned forward, his gaze locking onto mine, the fire casting sharp shadows across his face. "Then we take the next step. We make this impossible to ignore." I took a deep breath, feeling the familiar tremors creep into my fingers. "How?" Liam's grin turned feral, a glint of the brother I had once idolized flashing in his eyes. "We confront them, publicly, make them answer for everything with the world watching." My pulse quickened, the fear I had carried for so long now burning away under the steady heat of my anger. "I'm ready." The press conference took place 3 days later. A small but fiercely determined crowd gathered outside the Neurovita headquarters. Cameras flashed, microphones jostled for position, and curious bystanders whispered as Liam and I stepped up to the hastily assembled podium. I felt my knees threaten to buckle, my heart racing as the crowd's attention turned to me, but I kept my chin up, my spine straight, my grip on the microphone steady despite the tremors. "My name is Ava Hart." I began, my voice echoing off the glass and steel of the building behind me. For years, I was a victim, a patient, a test subject, a forgotten child. But not anymore. I felt Liam's steady presence beside me, his hand a reassuring weight on my shoulder. "My parents sold me to this company," I continued, my voice growing stronger. The rage I had carried for so long, now a steady fire in my chest. "They signed me up for experimental treatments without my consent, took the money and abandoned me when the side effects became too much. They tried to erase me." Cameras clicked, reporters scribbled furiously, and a murmur rippled through the crowd. But I survived. I said, my voice rising above the noise. "I am here and I will not be silenced." I stepped back, letting the microphone drop, my heart pounding as the crowd erupted into a storm of shouts and camera flashes. I felt Liam's arm around my shoulders, his voice a low, proud whisper in my ear. "You did it." I took a deep breath, my legs still trembling, but my heart steady, a fierce, unbreakable fire burning in my chest. For the first time in my life, I felt free. Story 2. Brandon is my name. My age is 34, and I've been the one behind the curtain for as long as I can remember. While my family grinned for the pictures I was discreetly pulling, the threads arranging, paying, repairing, and smoothing things out. That's not what I say to sound honorable. It's simply the way it has always been. I was the planner, the trustworthy one, and the responsible one. I was already assisting my younger siblings with their homework and making appointments for my mom's doctor's visits. When I was 12, Dad used to call me the glue and give me a pat on the back, but glue never gets a thank you. Until it cracks, it merely keeps everything together. This year was Dad's 65th birthday. A significant amount retirement, Medicare. Everything. I assumed that I would go all out. Every time he expressed his desire to travel to the Caribbean, a bright, sunny place with unending buffets and crystal-clear water. 6 months before the trip, I began organizing it. I looked into shore excursions, rooms, and cruise lines in order to get a personalized cake with the words, "Happy 65th Captain Kin," inscribed in gold icing. I even worked with the ship's events manager. I spent a total of $10 to $200 on the vacation. I remained still. I did this for my father. Not only for him either. It was for everyone in the family. For my parents. I reserved cottages. Kevin, my younger brother, and his spouse. Myself, my sister Gina, and Lisa, her girlfriend. There are 7 of us. I ensured that everyone had a paid itinerary and a private balcony, scuba diving in St. Thomas, San Juan zip line in Barbados, sampling rum. Everything. I even created custom baggage tags. I was reviewing my packing list at my work 3 days prior to the vacation. It was a group text from Gina when my phone died. "Just so you know, Brandon, we gave Lisa your cottage instead. According to Dad, she makes him laugh more and he wants to spend the trip with her. I hope that's cool." I read it again after blinking at the screen. To be sure I hadn't missed a joke, I scrolled higher. Perhaps they were planning a surprise and this was part of it. Not at all. Kevin's response was, "LOL, classic dad." Lisa used a heart emoji in response. Nobody spoke to me. Nobody inquired about my feelings about relinquishing the place I had paid for. Nobody even bothered to express gratitude. They treated me like a stray extra who had gone off to their holiday, bumping my hotel, my trip, and my card. For a while, I just sat there, not upset. Not quite yet. Mostly in a state of shock. You are familiar with the constricted sensation behind your eyelids, similar to the buildup to a storm. That was how it felt. The realization that this was nothing new came slowly and bitterly. It was only the priciest iteration of an ancient design. They constantly took, and I always gave. Lisa had more humor. Lisa was more entertaining. Lisa was nearer to me and the family. The organizer was me, the backup plan, the wallet. I took a good look at the message before responding. Make a copy of that. I only stated that. Not cool, not okay. 2 terms with a wide range of meanings. They didn't inquire further. I poured myself some whiskey that evening. I turned on my laptop and signed into all of the reservation portals that were available to me. The group airport, transfer, the cake seller, the cruise line, and even the private island tour. I canceled all of them and made arrangements to send everyone to the port. The problem with being the planner, the fixer, and the glue is this. Everything was in my name, including the booking confirmation and the password, 24 a.m. Gina sent me an SMS. "Hello, just making sure. Has the snorkeling trip been canceled? The app does not display it." I didn't respond. Kevin added, "Bro, why does the cruise booking say no active reservation at 4:11 a.m.? What's happening? Didn't respond yet. 6 a.m. My mother called. I let it to ring. After that, I switched off my phone and took a stroll. While some repercussions was to be expected. What transpired next was a cascade. It seems that my parents had previously discussed the cruise with all of their acquaintances. Both Gina and Kevin had taken time off from their jobs. They had set up automated light timers, dog sitters, and daycare. For the trip, Lisa reportedly purchased a whole new beach attire, tagging it on Instagram with the hashtag #CruiseQueen, and now, nothing don't travel, not a cake, no beach. Even their enhanced drink packages were canceled by me. However, it wasn't the end. The satisfying part wasn't even that. Because I was organizing my own sea for the last few years, while they were rushing contacting support, ranting with customer service representatives, and trying to rebook at the last minute, only to discover that everything was either sold out or quadruple the price. In a house I owned, my parents had been living for free. I inherited the house from my grandpa, so technically it was still in my name. It made sense, so I'd let them remain there. They were mortgage-free. I didn't require the location, and I felt like a good son because of it. The once I saw that sentence, everything changed. I thus got in touch with a property management business, scheduled a thorough inspection, and delivered a formal notice of tenancy termination. 3 days later, the locks were replaced. The utility accounts no longer included their name. They were utilizing a shared Verizon family plan that I terminated under my name. Their storage unit, of course, paid until the end of the month before being scheduled for removal. I didn't yell. It wasn't a dramatic email that I wrote. I just relocated each component individually. The worst part is that they didn't even know the trip was canceled until the day before their scheduled departure. They arrived at the harbor wearing similar t-shirts that read, "Dad's 65th ship happens," smiling and carrying luggage. However, no check-in was made. No reservations. No cabin? Not a cake? No Brandon. That only served as the warm-up. It was already too late when they recognized what had transpired. Since I started receiving calls once more, I am aware of this. Not messages, voicemails, and calls from confused and desperate people. Some are enraged, while some are only begging. It appears that there has been some sort of error. "Brandon, honey." The first message came through with Mom's voice crackling. "We're not on the list," the cruise line claims. "Would you please give them a call?" "You made all the reservations correct, Kevin." Again, "All okay, man, not amusing." "As if we understand?" "You're angry?" Lisa's statements were meaningless. "Give me a call. Let's make this right." There was no voicemail from Gina. She just made 7 consecutive calls. Lisa, for the first time in weeks, she sent me a message. "Actually, Brandon, I know we started off badly, but this is a huge event for your dad. Don't spoil his special day." Over a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding. Before I clicked, I watched her message go unread for an hour, observed. Since it wasn't about the trip at that point, rather it was about every family portrait I took for them, and being instructed to stand behind the camera, I didn't respond. "All of them. I appreciate your planning. Every Christmas I spent cleaning dishes I never received. Every Brandon will take care of things, treating me like a live assistant, while the joy was watching football rather than their son, their sibling. I had given them the benefit of the doubt for years, telling myself that they loved me, that they were only in the moment, and that they didn't mean it, simply didn't convey it in the same manner. However, I paid for and handed it to Lisa with a nonchalant, "She makes Dad laugh more," after they stole my room, which was my actual wager on the trip. I realized then that they still remembered me. They simply didn't believe that I was important. Then they were outdoors now, literally, because they returned to the house. I used to let them reside in 3 days after the disastrous cruise and were unable to enter, with my car parked across the street, my windows tinted, and my sunglasses on. I watched. I wanted to see it because I needed it to feel real, not because I was cruel. For once, I wanted them to experience the same sense of exclusion I did. Not welcome. The handle was first tried by a small mother, then the subsequent doorbell fumbling with his keys. The previous evening, I had had my locks changed. Once more they rang, I was knocked. I saw the bewilderment turn to annoyance, then to fear. Kevin took his phone out. I could infer what he observed. Due to non-payment and unauthorized subletting, they were given 30 days to leave the property by a forwarded legal notice that I had printed and emailed. Technically true, thanks to Lisa, crashing there, without notice, a few weeks prior. Gina stormed to the side of the house and tried the back door. I'd had that reinforced too. Eventually, they noticed the neighbor watching the same neighborhood once asked me why I never came to the barbecues, then laughed when I said I wasn't invited. She gave me a nod as I drove off that afternoon. The texts turned angrier after that. "You had to know, right? Where are we supposed to go, Brandon? This is insane. You're acting like a stranger." Lisa's post about the cruise quietly disappeared from her feed. Then the real unraveling began. Dad's old business partner texted me to ask why the emergency fund wasn't responding to payment requests. Turns out my name was still attached as co-signer. Another thing I'd been too helpful to change, so I did. I moved the money to a trust under my name. Legal clean. I even called to confirm there was no breach of contract. There wasn't. Next came the streaming services. Netflix, Hulu, Spotify family plan, all canceled. Passwords changed. Email logins locked. A week later, I got a call from Mom. I stared at it. Didn't answer. Then another voicemail. She sounded tired. Smaller Brandon. We don't know what to do. Your dad's sleeping on Kevin's couch and Jenny's staying with friends. I know you're angry, but this is your family. We're not perfect, but we love you. Can we please just talk? I sat on my couch surrounded by silence. No laughter, no noise, no obligation, just tranquility. And then I got another message from Jenna this time. No greeting, no apology. Just, are you seriously going to throw away your entire family over a joke? That's when something shifted in me, because it wasn't just a joke. It was a summary, a distillation of every moment I'd been told I was less than every time they pushed me aside. I then acted shocked when I didn't stick around to pick up the pieces. I thought about replying. Instead, I started writing something else, not to them, to the lawyer. Because this wasn't just a vacation anymore. This was a full reset, and they hadn't even seen the worst part yet. I didn't reply to Jenny's message. I didn't need to. I was already several steps ahead, drafting documents with my attorney to formalize what had already begun. A clean separation, emotionally, financially, legally. There was no major encounter, no shouting match. I didn't hurl dishes or yell that I was done, since I had been done softly, gently in the manner. You stop watering a plant, not out of malice, but because you understand it was never yours to take care of in the first place. The lawyer's office was a tiny spot situated between a bakery and a tailor shop downtown. Nothing spectacular, but it felt decisive. We met in person. I brought a list carefully written, cross-referenced. My name was still on. More than I realized, my parents' health insurance copay account, a line of credit they'd been utilizing for years in case of crises. The registration on the family automobile remained in my name from when I helped refinance it 5 years ago. I ordered the lawyer to transfer, revoke, dissolve, or close everything, whichever would remove the relationships fastest. And that storage unit, I had it open. I didn't discard anything. I'm not that individual. However, because Dad was staying at Kevin's, I paid movers to have everything packed up and sent there. On top of the boxes, the invoice was taped. At this point, the message's tone changed once again. They had lost their anger. They didn't understand. I was hurt. It's almost theatrical. This isn't you, Brandon. Could we just take a seat like grown-ups? You're taking revenge. Hateful. That one stayed with me. I nearly burst out laughing at the irony. Because I had always been understanding, forgiving, and accommodating for 34 years. Kevin destroyed his car and required a trip from the police station by himself, so I missed my college graduation. Jen rent money twice without ever requesting reimbursement. In an attempt to cheer them up following Dad's operation last fall, I sent Mom and Dad to Vermont. I did it for no recognition. I think that's what family was meant to be. Therefore, I did it. However, they didn't. Not at all. My generosity wasn't love to them. It was inventory. A resource is anything that can be distributed, utilized, assumed. The day I discovered the voicemail made that very obvious. I hadn't spoken to that person in years. Uncle Denny, the younger brother of my dad. He got into a fight with his father about a little matter. Dennis never paid back the money he borrowed, according to Dad. Dad lied about a loan, Dennis said. That never took place. Who can tell the truth? But I nearly didn't respond when Dennis called me out of the blue. He sounded lower than I had recalled, slower, as if each syllable had to be drawn from the depths. I don't want to interfere, but I believe you ought to be aware, Brandon. The other day, your mom left a message on your aunt's phone. I was unaware that it was still recording. She was ranting about you, saying that this whole situation is simply another instance of your constant pretense of superiority, said that you're punishing them because you can't bear to see other people happy, and that you've never understood what it takes to make sacrifices. He hesitated. I wanted to share it with you. I said very little. I just thanked him. I hung up and sat in quiet, although I told him I appreciated the call. Not even the words were painful. It was the affirmation, the knowledge that after everything, they were still blind to their mistakes. They continued to portray themselves as the victims in a narrative that I had no desire to create. The next day, I revised my will, took all of my family members off of the beneficiaries list, and established a new trust that would fund first-generation college student scholarships. Silently, there are no structures or plaques bearing my name, just something practical, something tangible. I changed my phone number the same week, new carrier, new account, new phone. Only my best buddy Sam, my lawyer, and my assistant were given the number. It was Sam who brought 2 six-packs and a bag of tacos over that evening. He remained silent, asked if I wanted to watch something that wasn't about family, and then offered me a drink. We watched an outdated action film with predictable explosions and awful dialogue. It was flawless. The knock on my door came at that moment. I had no expectations, no deliveries, no appointments. I went to check on the people while you did the TV. Sam Jenna was the one hair secured. She has dark circles beneath her eyes. She held her phone tightly in one hand. In the other was what appeared to be a folder. She didn't appear upset. She appeared exhausted. The door was not opened by me. Softer this time, she knocked. "I just want to talk, Brandon." I stood behind the door and watched her. Not talking, not moving. Then she said it. "It has to do with Dad." Something took place. A gentle knock again, then a softer one. In Kevin's backyard, he fell off a ladder. He's okay. Bruised ribs and a sprained wrist. He's afraid, though. He's requesting you. I remained silent, not by way of the door. Not in my mind. I wasn't cold in my silence. Clarity was the key. I was no longer the anxious, eager-to-please son. I didn't feel guilt surging up or some compulsion to rush to his side and fix everything. I just felt curious. I was wondering what angle this was. Curious if they still thought this was a game of leverage. "I know we messed up," Jenna said after a long pause. "I know you don't trust us. Maybe you never should have. But he's asking for you, Brandon. Not Kevin. Not even Lisa." I finally opened the door. Not because she said the right thing, but because I was ready to look her in the eye. And when I did, I saw it. Not manipulation. Not a properly rehearsed script. Just fatigue. And maybe a shard of comprehension. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her voice when she spoke again was rough. He stated he wanted to apologize. I gave a nod. "So let him." She seemed bewildered. "To you, Brandon. Not in a group SMS. Not through me. To you." I went outside and slammed the door behind me. Didn't ask her inside. She gave me the folder after we stood on the porch. For a minute, I opened it. A note in Dad's blocky, uneven handwriting was inside. It was brief. I'm not very good at saying the correct words. "Brandon, not at all. I am aware that I have relied too much on you. Too much was expected. I also realized that I never truly gave you the gratitude I deserved. The slack was always taken by you, and by pretending it didn't matter. I made it worse. I allowed others to belittle you. I occasionally joined in. I'm responsible for it. I apologize. None of it was fair to you. I hope you're content right now, Dad. You deserve to be." I waited to feel anything as I stood there reading it again. Anger, verification, sadness. But I just sensed the reality of it. Although it wasn't flawless, the apology was sincere. Jenna gave me a glance. "Did you decide not to call?" Claimed that he assumed you would hang up if he phoned, block him if he texted you. She was not mistaken. She went on, "I'm not here to guilt you. I wanted to let you know that he's making an effort." I gave a nod, gave the folder back, closing it. "Inform him I received the letter. Would you like to know?" Slowly, she nodded once more. Also, for the first time in a long time, she didn't dispute. "Okay," she responded simply and made her way back to her vehicle. The following day, I saw her drive away. I mailed Kevin a little package. There was a Post-it note and a laminated copy of the letter. I appreciate the letter. We're through, but I accept your apologies. Be careful, I didn't require anything more. I would not return. I didn't require any staged forgiveness, arc, a tearful reunion, or a dramatic confrontation. I had no desire to gradually reintegrate them into my life, one text at a time. The chapter was closed. I choose to spend the ensuing months creating something greater instead. I formally opened the scholarship fund I had established and named it after my grandpa, who bequeathed me the dramatizing mansion I paid for the first 3 students' debt-free community college educations. We met and spoke with them, provided them with the type of assistance I wish I had received when I was their age. I had always wanted to visit Portugal, but I kept putting it off till later, so Sam and I did just that. For the first time in decades, I felt as I stood on the cliffs overlooking the ocean, as if I were no longer holding my breath. I sold the family home at a respectable profit and used the proceeds to invest in a small nonprofit incubator for first-generation business owners. I also purchased a tiny condo in the city. None of it was aired by me. Didn't publish anything online. I kept my family in the dark. After the voyage, I only lived for a year or so. That never took place. A letter arrived in the mail. No address for return. There was a picture of a photo. Dad with a cast on his chair arm, grinning clumsily at the rear camera. "We still speak about you," it stated. "Lisa finally learned how to make the stew you enjoyed. She always burns it. I figured you'd like that." "All right," I grinned but didn't answer. There was no closure. Those words must also be definitive. Freedom was what I received. Freedom from constantly being the fixer and the helper, the emotional trash can freedom to decide who may and cannot access me. I never lost interest in them. I just stopped allowing them to treat me like a disposable object. They can accept the repercussions. And at last I began life according to my own terms.